and I'll give you sort of a intro, and then we can kind of jump in directly to the issues that you're seeing. Is the volume coming through okay? Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm just waiting for, okay, there we go, finally. So, all right, guys, so today's speaker is going to be Kent Oliver. Kent is the owner of one of my favorite places in all the world, the Dakota on the east side, the Dakota East Side Ice House. You've been in business for 2 years, right? I guess it just hit the 2-year mark, right?
2 years tomorrow.
2 years tomorrow. Awesome. All right, too bad we can't all be there to celebrate, I guess. Yeah, so initially was working in a different field, but still in hospitality. That sort of dried up. I'm sure he'll talk to you a little bit about that. And then transitioned to open a bar, made some good choices, probably made some bad choices, may have some regrets, but also probably loving it. And then now we're thrown into this chaotic COVID-19 situation, which is wild in and of itself. And so if you haven't been there, when we do finally get the ability to go back to places for the real experience and everything, I definitely want to invite you all out to go check out the Dakota East Side Ice House. It's, again, like I said, it's one of my favorite places in all the world. So anyway, I'll go ahead and kind of pass it over to you, Kent, just to get a brief intro on sort of your background, how you got into the industry, and we can kind of we can start from there.
Okay. I guess that's where I'll start. So up until about 3 years ago, I worked, like you said, in hospitality, but it was with the boat company on the Riverwalk, Rio San Antonio Cruises. I was with that company for 19 years. Worked my way up through the company from the bottom, which was just, doing tours and that sort of thing. And in the last 5 years I was employed there, I was the director of operations for the company. Some of you may know that business is a city contract that went through we went through 5 rounds of trying to obtain that contract, and it was a kind of a big battle between the owner of our company and the city, and eventually it was awarded to someone else, which was what the city wanted to happen. That was a large corporation, actually headed by 2 local women, but in conjunction with Landry's restaurants. After meeting them, I decided that I didn't want to be a part of a big conglomerate like that. I'd always worked for family-owned businesses, small businesses, so it was just something that was very foreign to me, and it was really hard for me to kind of accept that. There's going to be lots of new chiefs above me, which didn't exist before. Excuse me. And so I decided I needed to do something else. And I didn't have very much money. I didn't have anything really. But I just decided that I was not going to accept their job offer, and I was not going to do that anymore. Shortly after, within hours, I realized that I didn't know what I was going to do next, because I'd been there for so long, and I had to figure out something new to do. Having a business not like the one that I have today, which is it's really turned into something completely different than I ever imagined. But having a business of my own and having control of the culture and how you treat people and that sort of thing definitely appealed to me, because I'm sure everyone has been in that situation where your beliefs and your the way you want things to go don't necessarily align with your employer, but yeah, you just have to just smile and go along with it. So it was definitely something I had the thought had something I'd entertained for a long time. On my way home that day from meeting what they called the takeover team from the other company, I passed this building, the building I'm sitting in now, which just recently had a renovation. The parking lot had been redone, and it had been a convenience store before. And I drove by just to look at it. I saw that the parking lot was done. I thought it looked nice, and so I drove back around the block and noticed that it was for lease, and thought, hey, maybe I could open a little ice house there. In my mind, opening an ice house was something that was going to be really, really simple. You just order some beer, you come in, you do your thing, and you go home at the end of the night. Just one person operation, nothing extremely hard, complicated, just pretty streamlined and easy. And I'm sure a lot of you starting in this process now to try and start your own business have learned that there's nothing streamlined and easy about starting a business at all. But at that time, I didn't know it, and so blindly I jumped into this whole situation and leased the building. And then, well, before that, let me back up just a little bit. I came and looked at the building the next day and told the owners kind of my idea of what I wanted to do. It was completely different than anything that anyone else who looked at the building had talked about doing. Any of you familiar with this side of town? Particularly here along Hackberry Street, there's nothing but convenience stores and gas stations, and it's pretty bleak. There's not a whole lot of anything different along here. So just that I had a different idea. They were interested in that. They were going to continue to show the building, but I got them to at least agree that before they leased it to anyone else, they'd let me know. And so it gave me a little bit of time to go ahead and form my LLC and get things a little bit in order, find some money. I cashed out my 401k, just kind of jumped all in, which is really scary right now. But I sold some property, just got a basic amount, a little bit of money that I could start this whole thing with. And that's really when I started learning. Like once we got the building to converted, it took us about 7 months to get it turned from a convenience store into a bar and restaurant, obviously, and a sizable amount of money. I really started learning about business. I didn't know, there's so much I didn't know, and so much that I'm still continually learning today. But just trying to just figure out all the things that you don't necessarily think of in the beginning. Like I said a few minutes ago, I thought it was going to be streamlined and easy. You buy beer, you sell beer. How hard could that be? But there's insurance and taxes and all the crazy stuff that comes with a business, and those are the things that they kind of throw you off, because you didn't, or at least I didn't take as many of those things into consideration as I should have. Maybe about half of them. Now I feel like I understand that so much more. I don't know that I'm that much better at it, but I'm still learning all the time. And definitely this latest blow is something really, really hard to negotiate. Like Ryan said, tomorrow is our 2nd anniversary. Getting through that first year was really, really, really tough, and thought I was going to lose it several times. But miraculously was able to find the resources and continue to go. And now, we were just, these first 2 months have been 2 of our best months, even though for January and February are traditionally in the service industry bad months. They have been great months for us, and I was looking forward to turning that corner finally for the 2nd year. And then you get get your feet knocked out from under you. So this new challenge of going from service industry into more of a retail situation, even though we're still doing the takeout, it's very much feels like a retail operation, which is something I know nothing about and I'm not comfortable with at all. But we're going day by day, and I'm trying to continue to employ people. I have 4 employees that we're still running with. Most of my employees were part-time. I had in February, at the end of February, we had I had 6 full-time employees, and I had 9 part-time employees. And we're down to the 4 now, full-time. So that's just that's kind of where we are right now, and we're just trying to negotiate this as we go along. I don't know if that's enough of the story, Ryan, that you wanted me to tell, or what more I could add in there.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, that's a good starting point for sure.
Yeah.
So as we kind of think through at the very beginning, can you talk to us a little bit about like how different getting set up as a business was and operating versus what you thought?
Oh, completely different. Completely different. There's just so many, like I kind of touched on, is that there's so many things you foolishly don't take into consideration. You know, just like I said, like insurance and taxes and those things that take such a chunk of money that you don't realize. You just don't realize how much that's going to be a part of, how much that's going to take out of the money that you're making in a business that has relatively small margins.
Absolutely. And you were not only just an ice house in the pure sense of just beer, you also offer food. And so
Right.
was that a part of your original plan, or was that something that you had to adopt?
So the way that this property was zoned, I had to have food, which was something I never wanted. And I'm sorry I didn't touch on that earlier. That was always kind of my rule when I had this dream earlier, was that I figured like I could handle the beer side because that would be easy, but food just scared the hell out of me, and I didn't want to have anything to do with the food. But as it was zoned, we had to just kind of figure that out, and so we actually, a friend of mine kind of helped me. We played around with what we were going to do with the menu. We decided on our menu 3 days before we opened, and just kind of threw it together, and we opened on that Monday 2 years ago with that menu. And our first customer was Paul Steven. If you don't know who he is, he writes for the Express News. Our first customer was Paul Steven, and he came in and ordered one of everything we had. And by 6 o'clock that afternoon, we'd been open 3 hours. There was already an article on my essay about the food and about the whole thing, and so we didn't even have any period of no expectation from people. Immediately the next day, we had people coming in who had read that article, and we just had to keep going. And that was a big surprise, just having to live up to expectations. When you kind of had low expectations for yourself, we thought it was all good, but we didn't know, it was just a lot to take that on, and just to take on that responsibility of just food. With food, you're taking people's health into your hands to a degree, because you're just, that's just something that always makes me nervous, and that's good that it makes me nervous, because I'm always on top of it, and I'm always just very freaked out about it all the time. So I just don't want I don't want to be responsible ever for anyone getting sick or anything like that. So it's just a big responsibility, and anyone who's going into the food industry, you need to realize, what a responsibility you have doing that. It's a big responsibility, people's health, and them trusting you that you're doing things the way you're supposed to.
Yeah, and so you talked a little bit about the zoning, and one of the things I remember, just happenstance, was Final Four a couple of years ago, and I just walked by and happened to walk in and see what was going on. How much of the building was the way that you, I guess, first stepped into it, and how much did you have to change to suit your own use? And was that even easier? Did you even think about that before you got into it?
Well, when I looked at the building, it had refrigeration, which we knew. It had 2 bathrooms, which we needed. It had plumbing, like for a 3-compartment sink, which I knew we'd need for behind the bar. Just some basic stuff that I knew that it had. Which in my mind, that was just going to take care of that was all the big things. Those are the 3 big things. But many thousands of dollars later, you realize that, we put in a wall, and putting in that wall caused big problems. It technically, by the city standards, changed the use of the building, And after that, then we had to go back and do plumbing schematics and electrical schematics and all sorts of stuff that, you know, set us back about 3 months, 4 months. You know, and you're still paying, you know, by that point I was already paying my lease. You know, our initial three months that we had a break on and kind of passed, and we were, you know, it's just a completely different place. Like, it's hard to remember it being a convenience store now, you know, with everything that's been done. But I guess that's the biggest thing is, you know, I think that whatever you think you're going to spend 3 times that or more. Is just basically how it happens, and just basic everything cost more than you imagine it's going to cost. Whether it's finish out or anything, everything across the board.
I think it's speaking specifically to that. It was a grocery before, right? And now it's sort of a grocery again. It's kind of odd.
Yeah, isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
You what?
I said it comes full circle, I guess.
Yeah. So this building was built in the 60s. There was an older building here that was torn down, and this building was built as a Chinese grocery in the 60s. And it was that through the 70s. Fell into disrepair in the 80s. The ceiling fell in the 90s. And then in the I guess 2011, they put a new roof on it. They put new electrical and that sort of thing. So the building itself was in pretty decent shape. It's just funny that here we are with groceries again. It's a little hard to take. Yeah.
And so you know, one of the things I really think is cool about how you opened up was it was very intentional and very thoughtful for a couple of different reasons. And so I wanted to kind of touch first on the area that you chose. And I know that you've lived on the east side for a while, but whereas a lot of people, you know, kind of look at the east side as maybe a dead zone, you took the chance of starting something up there. And also you chose an area that wasn't probably what people normally think of when they think of East Side as far as tourism or food and beverage. Right. It's not St. Paul Square. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you chose that location and really, you know, the struggles and maybe the positives about it?
Right. So I actually live 2 blocks away from where I'm sitting right now. And just like you said, this is like I mentioned earlier, there's nothing along the street except for convenience stores and gas stations. And there's a couple of restaurants further down, but in my neighborhood, right where we are, we had nothing. And it's something that I always just kind of dreamed about, just having a place. I mean, I don't know if how many of you have read the book, The Walkable City, but it's a great book just talking about, you know, what makes great neighborhoods. And one of them is that you have a place to meet, just a place to meet up besides home and besides work, where your community can get together. And we didn't have that. I mean, there's a YMCA, there's some parks, there's some different stuff, but I just didn't feel like my neighborhood had anything like that. So that's kind of what, you know, kind of fueled my dream of doing this, was just to actually help create a place where I could meet my neighbors and meet the people who live in the neighborhood that I really, really enjoyed. Because I knew there was good people here. It's just we never had a place to get together. I knew my people. I mean, and I knew my neighbors. They're directly around me. You know, 5 or 6 houses in every direction. But other than that, not so much. And it's just something I felt like we needed, and I was willing to gamble on that because I felt like we kind of turned a corner within the last 3 or 4 years. I've been here for 12 years on this side of town, and things were very different 12 years ago. I mean, there was years where you didn't see, not only did you not see people outside their homes, but you couldn't walk a dog or ride a bike or do anything like that because there were so many stray dogs. I mean, there was packs of stray dogs, like 20 deep, that just kind of roamed the streets and did their thing. And it was just a long neglected area. There were so many rentals in this area. A lot of people, just a lot of kind of slumlord landlords that just rented to anyone, and just not any really civic pride at all. But I knew that there was enough people here that felt the way I did, and our proximity to downtown just makes it a great neighborhood. It's easy to get in and out of on the highways. There's just so many great things going for it. But I knew from the beginning that it was going to be an uphill battle, not just because of the location, but just because of the location, but and the stigma attached to this location as well. It's really hard for San Antonians to let go of anything. We love tradition, and whether that tradition is where you buy your turkey legs, or where you think is a bad part of town, it stays ingrained in everyone's head forever. And it's just really a hard thing to break. And it's something I hear every day. People coming in, it's like, we never would have expected something like this over here. Even people who live in the neighborhood, that walk in the front door, they're like, wow, we would have never thought this would be here. But the appreciation was there as well, and that was my intent as well, was to make it approachable to everyone. Whether you're living in a $30,000 house or a $300,000 house, there's common ground, and we need to have a place that we can meet and talk and find that common ground. And another thing that I felt was really important, just because of this recent influx of new people moving to the neighborhood, was trying to include the history of what was here before, not just in this building, but in this neighborhood. As many of you know, this was traditionally the black part of town. The working class part of town, when the railroads are here, and Alamo Ironworks and Coca-Cola and all the big companies that used to be where the Alamo Dome is now. All the people who worked in those places lived in this neighborhood, and there's really a rich history of the neighborhood doesn't really fit the normal narrative of San Antonio. And I wanted to make sure that we respected that and let people know where they were. Those of you who've been here know that we have tons of pictures and things, which I included from within about a 10-block radius of where we are, just to try and preserve that history, and that way to help people who were coming in, who'd been in the neighborhood forever, understand that I was trying to respect. I wasn't just trying to impose myself upon them, but bring them something that they didn't have, and let us move forward with it, with respect. And also just part of the things we offer, and as well as pricing and that sort of thing, I've tried to make it approachable, where if you aren't able to come in and buy a $4 or $5 craft beer, you can still come in and buy a $2 beer, and not feel like you're left out, or you're not part of what we're trying to create, which is a neighborhood community. And it's happened, and it's really amazing, and it's the most rewarding thing. Seeing the thing that you thought would happen, goes beyond the money part, goes beyond any of that. Seeing people, neighbors from blocks away that have lived blocks away and never knew each other, now hang out and text each other all the time, and it's really awesome. It's awesome for me to drive around the neighborhood and know someone on every single block. It's amazing. It's just it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different side of the business that I'm not sure I realized the impact a business can have on a community like that. Which that's definitely the rewarding part of all the struggle.
Yeah, and so the second part, you talked about a little bit the offerings, and so I thought the intentionality of the hours that you started with, which was 3 to 10, was it, or 11? It
3 to 11.
3 to 11, and also not kind of thinking through the menu that you offered on the beer side. I know we've talked about this before. You have the short bottles instead of the full bottles, and so that's kind of rubbed a few people the wrong way. But there was an intentionality to it, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
So this store before we took it over, it was a place where people came and got beer mainly was what it was. They sold predominantly Bud Light. That was the #1 seller. And when we came in, we sell Bud Light. We sell it on draft, and we sell the little mini bottles in a bucket. But we didn't sell just regular 12-ounce Bud Lights. It was just something that I had a friend that was here when I was first starting, and we just talked about it a lot and said, what would it be like if we didn't do that? If we offered it, but we just don't offer the normal thing, just to spark that change. I mean, it was just to try to get the change of, you want to be inclusive, but you don't want to cater to maybe previous problems that had been here, that sort of thing. And it sounds like something so silly, but in the first few months, most everyone that would come in would be great, but then you'd have people come in, and then if we didn't have Bud Light, they would just scream at us, and it was crazy. Of course, it was a little bit of indication for the decision we had made, but it was just crazy. It was just crazy that people could be so. There's a million other choices. They could have had anything but that, and it's just funny that one thing made such a big difference. I don't know exactly why I felt that way when we did that, but we did that with other things too. We would offer nicer versions of cheap things and cheaper versions of nice things. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we would, if we could get a bottle of something versus a can, or like a can of Heineken versus a bottle, just to kind of even that playing field. I don't know if that makes any sense. Where some of the nicer things were cheaper, and then some of the cheaper things cost a little bit more. I don't know if does that make sense, Ryan?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just go ahead.
Trying to provide to the neighborhood in ways that maybe they didn't have before. Is that what you're getting at?
Right. I mean, I guess the thought was to not just to just try and maybe bring things up just a little bit, if that makes any sense. Offer people things they're comfortable with, but offer them something they're maybe not comfortable with, but at a less of a price than they would get it somewhere else, because of maybe the packaging or the size or something like that. Just to make things approachable. I mean, I think that was one of the things we thought about a lot too. Was just since nothing had been offered before in this little stretch, how do we find out what people want, or do they even know what they want? I mean, all they've had is what they can get from the convenience store. So why don't we give them an opportunity to try different things and not just be stuck on Bud Light all the time? There's such a big world of other stuff out there. And I'm a Bud Light guy too. I mean, I'm not a snob a beer snob by far. Bud Light and Lone Star are my jam. But I've never really been a craft beer person, which is crazy because now, up until a couple weeks ago, we had 90 kinds of beer, and that's crazy. But it's just I just felt like we need to offer people an opportunity to experience some things maybe they hadn't experienced before.
Yeah, and Kent, one of the other things that I think is awesome about your menu is that you have a salad with everything that's on the menu, or maybe not everything, but almost everything comes with a salad, and it's like a really nice salad too. Which
it is, and people, yeah, that's not normal for this part of town either. But you know what? People eat that salad every time, and it's amazing. It's amazing because it's not something that's offered over here very often. But yeah, it's something we just decided from the beginning that it would be something nice to offer, and it was something that we could include on the plate that not only made it look better, but was a little different offering. It's just something that was a little bit better then what you're gonna get at the taqueria, or you're gonna get at, or you're not gonna order somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's something that if you're given it and you taste it and you like it, you might enjoy it. That sort of thing.
And so, thinking about the space that you're in again, I mean, it's sort of small on the inside. I mean, it's not incredibly small. I think it's, what is it, 50 capacity on the inside?
48.
48.
Which
so
was intentional as well. That was intentional as well. Those of you who are planning anything, just know that there's a whole another set of rules once you pass the capacity of 50 people. There's all sorts of different things that you have to have, whether it's fire suppression or multiple entrances and exits, and there's lots of things that change over 50 people. So we actually filled as much of this thing with other stuff as we could to keep the capacity low like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. There was something else I was going to touch on about this space. Oh, so then you really not only took sort of your own, home makeover, if you will, to the building itself, but then also the exterior, you've done so much with. And how much of that, I know it's been a wild evolution over the past 2 years. I feel like so much has changed about it. But how did you do all of that part? I think that's a big open question.
It's just been something that the outside, I mean, everything has been, what can we afford and when can we do it? There's so much stuff that you want to do, but the reality is unless you have really, really deep pockets or a line of investors behind you, it's really hard to find that money to do all those things. And so outside, we've just slowly, we've repurposed stuff, anywhere we can get materials for things, we've used repurposed materials, just slowly, adding to that as much as we can. And also sitting outside was something new for people, for the neighborhood. Like I said, 12 years ago, you wouldn't have been doing that, but now it makes me so happy. Nothing makes me happier than to drive up if I've been out to the store or something, and there's a bunch of people sitting outside. It makes the neighborhood feel alive. It's just it's a great thing. And so the more we can do to improve the outside, the better. And that we have plans, there's more stuff that we're planning to do outside once we get past this tough time.
So I feel like we've been talking a lot about the positives of really stuff that has gone right, but can you talk a little bit about stuff that went wrong and maybe how wrong it went?
So like I've said, there was a couple of times, particularly in that first year. I mean, it happens often. Like I said, the margins are small, and unless you've got really, really deep pockets, the hardest thing to keep is enough operating capital. That's the whole thing. Is because there's just times that it just gets things get really, really, really tight, and that's the hardest thing is weathering that and finding those resources, or just being lucky that all of a sudden you had a great week that you're able to, have some money from that you could put back a little bit to for the next couple weeks where there wouldn't be as good a business. In the beginning, though, I want to say we opened in April. So from April through August of 2018, our operating costs were double what we were making, and that depleted all of any amount of operating income I had pretty quick. So in September of 2018, I was pretty desperate. I was really, really desperate. Of course, just to get the place open, I'd extended all my credit as far as it would possibly go, which I wouldn't recommend doing. But it's amazing what you'll do for your children, and this is my child. And so being completely extended made it really, really hard to get a traditional business loan anywhere. And of course, it's really hard to get a business loan without any business. Like unless you have something your financials for a couple of years, it's going to be really, really hard to go to one and say, hey, I have this great dream and I think it's going to be great. And, everybody has a dream that they think is going to be great. So that was not an option. But I did find a company that was real willing to give me a loan. And it was, I can't remember what it was called. Small business something. Anyway, it was the best thing I could find at the time. And looking back, it was a horrible, horrible deal, but it kept us alive for the next 6 months at the time. But what the deal was basically this company would purchase your future receipts. So they would purchase $20,000. I mean, $16,000. $20,000 worth of receipts for $16,000. So I took that, and the only reason I took it was because if your sales were to go down, then they would lessen your payments, and if your business were to go out of business, the loan was forgiven, which at the time sounded like a great idea. That sounded good. The downside to all that was that you had to pay them daily. So I had to pay this loan every day. It was $136 a day, every day. Which if you pull out a calculator and do that math real quick, it's not a good deal at all. It was a horrible deal. I don't know what I was thinking. But luckily our business was growing at the time, and I was able to keep up with it. The only good thing about paying a loan off like that every day is that it was over pretty quick. So I got that. I think I got the money on the 1st of October, and it was paid off by May of 2019. And nothing has ever felt so free as the day that I didn't have to pay that $140. But I wouldn't recommend doing that to anyone. It was just the only, at the time, it was the only option I felt like I had. And luckily the business continued to grow from that point on. And sales, went up enough that I was able to cover that and, lessen that gap between operating costs and income.
Yeah, I think that's that's like a really big point, and so I appreciate you sharing it with everybody. If you kind of thinking on what you would have done differently, do you have suggestions for things that, not just for the capital side, but in general, of what you would have done differently at the beginning versus where you are now, or what would have helped expedite your growth?
I feel like what these people that are doing right now, the people that are listening in right now, I feel like they're doing exactly what they should be doing. At the time, like I said, this all happened really fast for me. I didn't have the time. I didn't feel like I had the time to go through a program like this because everything was time sensitive. The place I was just set on it being in a certain location at a certain time, and I felt like if I didn't do it, then I only had the excitement of doing it here in my neighborhood at that time, and so to think about going through a program like this, in fact, I went down to La Jose and went and talked to, I can't remember if it was you or Carlos or someone that was there, and talked about sitting down and a business plan and like all the things that you're supposed to do. And I just felt like, no, I can't do that. I don't have time to do all that. But taking the time to do that is definitely to the benefit of everyone. I wish I'd planned a little bit more. I wish I'd had the luxury of time to do that. It probably would have saved me a lot of money and a lot of heartache. But at the time, I just felt like I had to do it the way I did it, which I wouldn't recommend. But it's just one of those things, up until 3 weeks ago, I felt like I was finally reaping those rewards of those decisions. Now I'm not so sure. You know, you look back and I look at all the money that I put into this, and now facing this situation, it leaves me very vulnerable, and it leaves me in a very tough spot right now. And so it's kind of hard to take that. I don't know if that's really what you wanted me to, what you were asking.
No, it's your truth, right? So I feel like that's the most important part about everything that you're, you know, showcasing is really, this is what my situation was, and here's the good, here's the bad. I don't know if I recommend these things, but maybe try that. So I mean, everything is super valuable, and I respect it all. So there was a few other things that I wanted to ask about. And again, guys, if y'all have any questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat or jump in. You're more than welcome to at any point. So, you know, talking through what is now this sort of COVID-19 scenario, you being a grocery of sorts, how is that working? I mean, is this just sort of like, are you just kind of testing and iterating and trying to figure out what works, and you know, what is working for you, and how have you kind of let the community know how they can support you right now? That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's been a big change. You know, just like it feels like a retail business now, which is really different, and it's really nothing that I know anything about. Luckily, we have I feel like I have a pretty strong community of followers and people who like our product and like our food and have been really supportive. And it is supportive, and it's helped a lot. But you know, you're still bringing in, you know, maybe a third or a quarter of your normal income to the business, which is that's the hardest part, because you know the expenses. I mean, your food and your you know, the things that you're selling, those expenses change because you cut back, but you know, the other expenses don't change. Everything else stays the same. Trying to keep people employed. That's been my goal, is because that's the thing that hurts the most, is because, you know, you take employees on, and once you've done that, you're responsible for them and their well-being and that's the hardest thing. And I just hope that people realize that by supporting these small businesses, it's not just the business, the person who owns the business you're supporting. It's these other people that you know, their staff that you're supporting, you know, that are still struggling to make ends meet and struggle. I mean, their struggle is just as hard as mine, or harder. You know, that's the reality of the whole thing. We're trying as many things we can to get people in. Like I said, we brought in the grocery type things. We're doing vegetable boxes through a friend of mine, and we're bringing them in from, you know, on 2 days a week, on Wednesdays and Saturdays. We're going to be offering those. I've been on social media nonstop. It seems like, you know, so many places that have. I just felt like I was seeing less and less from other businesses, so I decided that I was going to double down, and so I've been trying to make my presence on social media almost obnoxious, but I just feel like that's the only way. I mean, I feel everybody's at home, and hopefully they'll just not forget us. That's the whole thing, is don't forget these little businesses.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. One more question for me before I jump to these others. It's not COVID related, so you don't have to worry. But it's more about how you've utilized and adapted something that really, from my understanding, I think has helped your business kind of flourish in a lot of ways, is events and music. Before, when you started, you didn't, I don't know if you cared that much about music, but now you sort of, I see it every day, I used to see it every day, I guess, that there's music all the time.
Yeah, so so watch what you wish for. I'll say that's one of the things. Like I mentioned earlier, I never wanted food. I also hated karaoke and wasn't a big fan of live music. And those are the three basic building blocks of my business now. You know, we have live music, um, four or 5 days a week. We have karaoke 1 or 2 times a week, and food is what's keeping us alive now. So I guess my best advice would be to remain fluid, and never say never, and never let your own personal tastes completely keep you out of taking ideas for other things. And we've created a great community with musicians here. Once we started having live music and just hearing how it went for them other places, I just couldn't believe that that's how musicians were treated. Like, they don't get a lot of respect a lot of times. And so I just kind of made it my goal to not be like that, and to treat them well, and to give them all I could give them, when I couldn't necessarily give them maybe the amount of money they were asking, but I could compensate with other things, with food or with drinks or whatever I could do, because they're underappreciated in the city for some reason. And they're a great thing. The music has made this place feel alive. I'll never forget the first time that a guitar was played in here, and suddenly it was alive. And that was when I first realized the difference that live music can make somewhere. And like I said, I was never a big fan of live music. It was just always something that would either irritate me because I couldn't talk to my friends or whatever, or just was something I didn't even search out or think about. And now it's a big part of my business, and I love it now. Now I love it. It makes me so happy, and it makes the place feel alive. Karaoke, same thing. Once you get past the irritating part of it, it's a good time. And if you're not in it to try and win an award, and you're just there for a good time, then it's something fun to have around. And then the food, like I said, we've just tried to give the best possible product we can to people for a reasonable price. And if you're putting out good stuff and not just trying to cut corners and make it, just make money off something cheap, if you're giving some people good food at a reasonable price, they're going to appreciate it. And that just kind of goes with all three of those things. It's all about giving a quality product that people are willing to accept.
Perfect. So I'm going to switch over to the questions that are in the chat right now.
Okay.
When you first started, did you do all the work yourself, or did you have to hire somebody off the bat?
I did most of the work, a lot of the work myself, and just friends and people I knew, and whoever I could get who knew somebody or had a cousin that did something, or typical San Antonio deal. Just try to get something for nothing. That's basically what you try to do, or for a 12-pack of beer or whatever you can get. That's what I had. That's what I did. That's probably not the way you should do that. You should probably could have saved some money there too in the long run. But that's how I did it.
Let me see. Other questions. You mentioned the loan company taking 16,000 or taking 20,000 of your receipts for 16,000. When you say receipts, do you mean sales, profit, revenue?
Sales.
Okay.
It was sales. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Let me see. Which social media platform has really worked best for you?
I would say for the 30 to 60-year-olds, it's Facebook. For the 20 to 40-year-olds, it's Instagram. But you have to have presence on both of them, and you have to have it multiple times a day on both of them, which is almost like a whole nother job altogether. But you have to be on there, and you have to be consistent.
Are you the person that manages the social media, or have you hired others to do that?
It has always been me. There's been 2 little brief moments where I tried to have someone else do it, and I was never happy with the results. So it's me.
Awesome. So how do you get your creativity to do all of that? It looks like you have a really good what do you call it, set of graphics. He always seems to be pretty creative, thoughtful. Are you some sort of Photoshop wizard, or?
No, it's great apps. There's so many great apps in the world. That's what I use. I just use apps on the phone. Everything I do is created on the phone. Whether it's standing in line at Restaurant Depot or, wherever I am, I'm always trying to create something. And somebody a year or so ago that worked with one of our customers, I think they work with iHeartMedia, told me that I needed to be posting something at least 3 times a day on every platform, and to whatever idea you have, to not overthink it, just to create it and put it out, because nobody's going to look at it as hard as you do. And once I got into that mode where just whatever idea came to my head, I just create whatever and put it out, I think it's been a lot more successful. Not trying to overthink each individual thing, just trying to get something out.
Are you having any difficulty acquiring ingredients or supplies right now to continue making or delivering products successfully?
So far, it has not been a problem, but I can see where there's beginning to be cracks. Just from multiple trips to Restaurant Depot and trying to order things through Cisco. There's suddenly things that aren't available, or they're ordered and when they're coming in date is unknown, and I expect that to get to be more frequent. Basic things are easy to get. It's the things that aren't basic that are going to get harder to get, if that makes sense.
Definitely. What's your most popular product right now? Is it toilet paper or bread or?
Well, we just really opened up the shop yesterday, so I will say we've sold more toilet paper than anything, but we're only allowing two rolls per customer, so there will be no hoarding here. We're just allowing 2 rolls per customer, and that way they can come back. I mean, we're not here to outfit you for the next year, which we're a few blocks away from you. You should be able to just walk over and grab a couple and go home and be set for the week. But as far as that goes, as far as the staples go, that's what it's been going. Bleach too. We've been selling quite a bit of bleach, but we just got the beans and rice and the bread and everything out yesterday. Eggs have been a big thing, because I know they've been hard for people to get at the grocery store, so we've actually sold quite a bit of eggs.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I totally forgot about the bleach part, but yeah, that seems like it'd be super relevant right now, I guess.
Right. And the stuff we have is from Cisco, so it's like industrial bleach, so it's like hardcore stuff. Oh.
So what's your outlook on the current situation? Do you feel like it's going to go on much longer? I mean, I realize this is sort of like crystal ball talking over here, but what's your plan, I guess, or do you have a plan? Is it just day by day? What are your feelings?
So my plan is day by day, pretty much through the next month. I think that, if we're able to sustain our current amount of business, I think we can make it through to May. Whether that's sustainable another month beyond that, I'm not sure. I'm in the process of trying to fill out loan applications and grant applications, which is something I'm not very good at, and that makes things very scary for me, just because I'm not a great paperwork guy. That's not my area of expertise, so I get really, really nervous when I'm having to do that. I'm just hoping that my financials that I have for the last 2 years that show a great amount of growth and potential, that will be enough to secure some loans and some stuff going forward, so that I'm able to at least keep these 4 people I have employed, and at least keep the place together.
Yeah, if you need any help with that, just let us know, or let me know. I have folks that'll be willing to help you through all of that. And there's new programs and new opportunities announced pretty regularly. So
Right.
I'll make sure that you get information on any of that if you need it.
Right.
Other questions from the folks? I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in, or if you have any other questions to put in the chat. I know some of y'all probably need time to type it out, but don't feel bad about doing that or jumping in. So I guess to move it along while people are thinking of other things to ask, how have your hours changed right now, or are you?
Yeah, for the last year we've operated from noon till midnight, 7 days a week, and now we're 3 to 6, 7 days a week. We're still doing 7 days a week. I want to try. I don't want to, until I have to. I don't want to break up that continuity of being here every day, because I want to be able to be here today for the community. Now with these basic goods, as well as the food and other things we offer, I just don't want to. I don't want to break that yet. But it's a reality that it may have to change, just depending on how things move forward.
That's good. Let me see. So, I guess, in a different world, it would have been the year that you might have had the boom. But what is your hope? Looking down, when you started this business, was there an out for you, or was it, hey, this is just the thing I want to do forever, or was it the thing you hope to have 20 Dakotas at some point? Have you put much thought into that?
It was never my intention to have more than one place. No, I just wanted to have a place that I wanted to have a job I enjoyed going to every day, and spending time with people I enjoyed being around. Just that simple, and not having to answer to somebody else. That was the main driving force behind everything, and not even to make $1 million. I mean, just to be able to live a decent life and provide a place for people to hang out and enjoy the neighborhood, and maybe I felt like that by having a business in the neighborhood, I'd have more say in how we move forward and how this neighborhood changes in the coming years. With the investment of having a business property as well as living in the neighborhood, maybe be able to influence how things grow and how things change to a certain degree. I felt like that was an opportunity, because that's where my true passion lies there, and serving the community and just how it develops and how we interact with each other.
So I know we have a one person that's really looking to start getting his product in more businesses. It's an alcohol-based product, and I was curious, maybe not 100% related to that, but really, how often are you approached by people wanting to try something in your business, and really, how open are you to partnerships? What do you look for when people approach you about situations like that, or do they happen with you?
Oh, it happens all the time, and particularly if it's local, then I'm usually in, at least to try it, because I know how hard it is to get anything started, and so any opportunity that I can give somebody, a little bit of a bump or a little bit of a help, I'll try it at least once. Of course, if it's something that we try and it's not moving, I can't put further investment in it, but I'm willing to give that opportunity to particularly anybody local. I get approached by big companies all the time to bring in their products, and I'm not near as excited about that or as anxious to help. But local stuff, always.
What did you think that would be a success that really didn't turn out to be a success within your business?
Like give me an example of something I don't know that I understand the question exactly.
Well, like for example, like was there something on the menu that you thought would have been wildly successful that didn't work out, or something in the bar that you thought would have worked out really well but really just didn't work out?
Yeah,
or even an event that would work out?
I have examples of both. So our most popular thing is our queso, which was something that I've been making for parties for 25 years. And so when I opened, all my friends were like, "You're gonna make the dip, right?" And I was like, "Of course not. That's ridiculous." Because it's something that that I just never thought about. And then eventually I decided to put it on the menu and start making it. And then in January we got top 25 best dishes in San Antonio on the Express News for that dip. So that's pretty awesome. That was something I didn't ever imagine would happen with the queso. The thing that didn't take off would be brunch. We tried to do brunch, or we called it not brunch. We did it from noon to 6 instead of from like 11 to 3. Man, I pushed that thing and tried really, really hard with that for a good 6 months and just couldn't get it off the ground. And then, of course, as soon as we stopped doing it, everybody says, "Oh, you don't do anything for brunch or anything like that." But yeah, I just couldn't get it to stick no matter what. And we did a whole new menu. Everybody loved the food. Everybody thought everything was great, but it just didn't catch on for whatever reason.
Was that advice that you got from somebody else? And what I'm trying to get at is what have you listened to that you found to be valuable, and then what have you listened to that you found out was just completely wrong for you?
So I would say some of the best advice I have gotten through all this was from Jody Newman, who told me a year ago, like right when I was really, really struggling, was that your product isn't necessarily for everyone. Be true to what you're selling, and if somebody doesn't like it, they can go somewhere else. And the people who like you will search you out, and they'll be true to you. And I think that's some great advice, just in that you can't make everyone happy all the time. But if you have something that's a product that you're passionate about and that is truly yours and your heart's in it, the people who want that will search you out, and they will be there for you. And those people have proven that to me time and time again, particularly these past 3 weeks.
And then on the side of advice that didn't work out, is there anything that you have in that bucket?
I guess I don't really necessarily have advice that didn't work out, but I would just say that don't be afraid to seek advice. That's probably my biggest problem is not that I think I know everything, but I'm just apprehensive to admit that I don't know everything. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just hard to ask for help sometimes. And with places like Launch, where there's people who are willing to give you their the information you need, don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to just let your guard down a little bit and admit that you're clueless about how something works.
Thank you. And then really, hopefully other people, if there's no more questions, I just have maybe one or two more for myself. So in terms of, I had it and I lost it, so give me a minute. I don't know if you have anything to share, just about your, give me a second. Sorry. How did you? Okay, this is one of them. I feel like we didn't really touch on how you knew that a bar was going to be the right concept for you. Was that something that you've always had an inspiration for? I know that community was important to you, but was a bar always the concept for you? Was this sort of the retirement plan, or was this it just happened to be the idea that came to fruition? Did you imagine yourself to ever be an entrepreneur?
It's really funny because I still have problems with calling this place a bar. It's just something. It's just a weird stigma I have in my head about calling it a bar. But it is. That is what it is. 25 years ago, the first time I ever went to La Tuna, I was like, man, this is the place, and I just like the way that there was people from all walks of life there, and it just seemed like such a great example of San Antonio and just how San Antonio is and how it can be and how I hope it continues to be, just where people from all walks of life are able to, commingle and get along and hang out and it just be great. That's what made me want to do this, was just the feeling that I felt the first time I ever went to La Tuna. I guess that's where that came from. For me, it's really hard to say this right now just because the struggle is starting to get very, very real. The money was never my primary objective in this, which is really dumb. Starting a business, my father passed away last year, and I would tell him when I was trying to get this off the ground and do all this, I kept telling him, I just feel like if my heart's in it and if I'm working towards everything else, that the money will come in the end. And he told me that was the stupidest thing he'd ever heard, but it probably is. But I just feel like I got kind of lost in that somewhere.
No problem.
It wasn't my intent. Say it again.
I was just saying that I jumped in when I shouldn't have. Go ahead.
No, but I was just saying to answer your question, it wasn't my intention as something to be able to retire off of or anything like that. It was just a means of at the time when it started, it was just a means of carrying on and a means of serving the community in the only way I knew how. Like I said, I've always been in the service industry, not in a restaurant, but in serving people, and it was the only way I knew how, even though it was vastly different than what I was accustomed to. Does that answer that kind of?
Yeah, it does. And so the last question that I have on my end, I know that there's maybe one or two more in the chat real quick, but so you've done a really good job of building community, including the what is it, Fifth Friday, I think it is, right. Block cleanups. And so I'm wondering, as the neighborhood has really changed, and it seems like the East Side changes drastically, sometimes daily. I don't know if you've experienced that. Just if you don't go every day, it seems like it changes very rapidly. But new businesses seem to be popping up pretty regularly. I mean, do you see the neighborhood changing for the better, the worse, or is it sort of is what it is? I mean, the unfortunate part is that there is some level of gentrification, and some of that community is missing. But you've done such a great job in trying to keep it there. What are your thoughts on keeping it the way you wanted it to be, or changing as it evolves?
It's going to change, and I know. I mean, hopefully, we weather all the impending doom. But I think it's just I feel like a lot of businesses coming in. I feel like the ones who come in with the approach of inclusion and not imposition. Does that make sense? That they come in and they're willing to work with the neighborhood instead of imposing themselves upon it, are going to be more successful. I think that's really important, and I think it's already shown in some of the businesses who've come in the last 2 or 3 years and gone very quickly, just because they felt like they were gonna come in here and they were gonna save everything, and by turning it into something completely different, and quickly found out that people didn't necessarily want everything to be different. I think that's part of it. I think that moving forward, that's going to become more important in some instances. A lot of the people moving over here, I would say the people moving over here have better intentions than the people who are maybe renovating buildings and building houses and that sort of thing. Most of the people moving into the neighborhood are just wanting to live in a nice neighborhood with good proximity to downtown and build a life and build a family, and that's the important part. That's what builds community, is people who have time invested in their area. And I think that's important for any business coming in. Is, if you're just driving in from 20 miles away and operating every day and driving out at the end of the day, and you have no thought of what's going on around you, then you're really missing out on opportunities.
Okay, there are a few questions in the chat. So I know that you mentioned at the beginning you had, was it the Express News that came in and did an article, and that sort of initially brought you in some folks. But how did you build the message that you were going to be open? How did you build your following? Was it, did you walk the block and say, hey, I'm Kent, and if my business is going to be around the corner, or?
I did not do that. I wish I had done that. I wish I had walked the block a lot more than I did. But yeah, we basically did just open the doors. I see the question on there. So did you just open and people started noticing? It kind of happened like that. And then just, I think just paying special attention to every single person who came through the door was really important. I mean, anyone who's lived in San Antonio any amount of time knows that word of mouth is very powerful here, and I'm sure it is in other cities as well. But I think it's extremely powerful here in San Antonio because of what I mentioned earlier. Just that people don't like change, and they only want to go places that other people know about, or they want to be the person who found the next cool place and share it with their friends. And I think that's what's so important, is treating everybody that walks through the door like they're the most important person there at the time, and just being there to greet them and being there to share your dream or in my instance at least, I feel like I preach to these people all the time, preach to everybody who come in, just about community and about just having this special place where people can come together and about supporting your neighbors and just all the things that I hold really dear in my heart. And I think that's just being genuine is what helped us. Just being completely genuine and wanting to share that with everyone.
Awesome. Okay, well, I don't see anything else in the chat, so I guess I'm going to go ahead and ask what I think will be the last question before we let you go. Is you have on the side of your building a big mural, which I think is a really cool mural. It's just be nice, damn it. How did you come up with that? And I feel like it's such a resonant thing, not only for you and your business, for the neighborhood, but just kind of should be hopefully resonate with everybody. How did that come to be? So
Matt Tumlinson was someone that I had worked with before. He actually worked on the boats way back in the day when he was supplementing his business. Just a second. When he was supplementing his artwork, with another job, and so he when I started my business, I told him I wanted a mural of some sort, and I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I told him, you know, all the stories of the East Side that I knew, and just, you know, how the community had been pushed and pushed and pushed, you know, dating back to the beginning of the city. You know, the black population continually being pushed further and further and further away, and, you know, almost at their breaking point. And then also some of the things I touched on earlier, just about how, you know, there has to be common ground between the people who live here already and the people who are moving into the neighborhood. And, you know, it can't just be eggshells all the time. There has to be something that's there. And so we talked about old ice houses and what they looked like and all sorts of stuff. So I had all these ideas. I mean, hours of stuff we had talked about. And then we just kind of landed on advertising on the side of old ice houses, but we just didn't know what it was going to say, or what could it be, or what was that going to look like, because I wanted whatever we did to encapsulate everything we had talked about, but I wanted it to be simple and clean and crisp. And so we had looked at, I think it was a Dr. Pepper ad was what we were looking at originally. Some different stuff, and I said, I don't care what it says. I mean, it could say "Be nice, damn it." Just something that simple. And he actually took those exact words and translated them into what we have now, which is based off. If you don't recognize it, it's based off of Big Red, another San Antonio legend. Big Red ad from the 40s and 50s. And then the moment he put it up on the side of the building that night, I think we all realized that it was so much bigger than just us and just this community, but it spoke to, you know, the country, and now to the world. I mean, I think it's something that we can all work on for sure. And now we call it our logo. It's kind of our logo without our name in it, because it's more recognizable than our logo.
That's awesome. Well, Ken, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today. Paul, if people want to maybe reach out to you and connect, is there a best way to do that?
Yeah, you can email me. It's kento@thedakotasa.com. Or you could, yeah, that'd be a great way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Kent. I really appreciate it. And for everyone else on the call, thank you again for joining. As always, we really appreciate it. And I know it's sometimes hard. A lot of the mentors that we've had as we've had to transition to the online forum have said, you know, hey, I can't really gauge whether or not people care or, you know, what's going on. But just like last time, Kent, everybody is extremely appreciative. If you can see the chat, then you probably see all the thank you notes there. But yeah, it really means a lot, not only to them, but to us in a lot of ways that you're sharing and really, you know, living the mission that you put on the side of your building. So it means a lot. So thank you again. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, hope you have a great rest of your day, and also hope that we make it all through this perfectly fine and are able to enjoy it on the other side. So.
Yes, sir. Yes,
yeah,
sir. For sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.